welcome to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. I'm your host, Louis Padian. I hope that you're doing well and are enjoying the podcast and the topics we've covered so far. These podcasts are released every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, so be sure to subscribe wherever you are listening to be kept up to date. So in today's episode, we will be covering sugar-free drinks. Are they good for us? Are they full of toxins? And should we be worried about them? So first of all, I think it's important to define what sugar-free drinks are. So sugar-free drinks contain minimal to no sugars, and from what I've read, that means less than 0.5 grams of sugar per serving, but still have that sweetness through either artificial or natural non-sugar sweeteners, or we might call them non-nutritive sweeteners. They include things like diet drinks such as Diet Coke, Pepsi Max, all those, Coke Zero, sugar-free juices like squash, flavoured waters now that come in with a sugar-free option as well, and zero-calorie drinks in general, or sports drinks. They seem to become quite popular in the 1960s and tended to be put forward due to the belief that sugar is linked to the obesity crisis, or the increase in obesity rates across the UK, Europe, the world, everywhere really. And actually, is that true? Probably not, but that's probably not an argument for today. So that's potentially one of the reasons why they've brought it in, and it became especially popular. I can't remember, it was definitely within the last decade that they brought in that sugar tax. So drinks containing a certain amount of sugar would have an increased tax, as they want to reduce the availability really for people to drink high sugar, high calorie drinks. Was that an effective tool? Yes and no. The government they put a tax on it. A lot of the companies reformulated their ingredients so they fell just below that threshold, so not necessarily going all the way to a sugar-free, but lower sugar. And also the ones that contained full sugar, the increase in money or the increase in cost was just handed on to the consumer, so they just appear to be slightly more expensive. So it's yet to see. As we can see with the obesity rates currently still increasing, it might seem on the surface that it hasn't worked. In my opinion, that it wasn't really a strong proposal in the first place, and I don't think that's really the problem when it comes to obesity. But I digress. Back to sugar-free drinks. So sugar-free drinks, they usually fall into two different types of sweeteners that will be added. You'll have your artificial sweeteners, such as aspartame, sucralose, pardon me if I can't pronounce these very well, a sulfamic K, and saccharin, which are some common examples. These offer really intense sweetness, but with minimal to no calories. And they've all been tested rigorously by the food standards regulations, so there's nothing to worry about on that front. They tend to do various stages of testing before it even gets to human consumption. And the other type of sweeteners is sort of the ones that you might have heard around natural sweeteners, and these are the ones that you might have heard of: stevia, monk fruit extract, erythritol, and these are the ones that people tend to prefer just because of their natural label. And again, these offer fewer calories than sugar, but they may have some calories in them. And also, if consumed in excess, and you may have read this on labels before, can cause a mild to full-on laxative effect in some people. So those sugar-free sweets that you might see people having, if you have too many of those, it will really, really upset your tummy. So sugar-free drinks and health in general. So what we tend to see across the board is that sugar-free drinks may help with people managing their weight. And this, from my experience, from my understanding of the research, is that it's not really a huge change for people. They tend to be a like-for-like swap. So Coca-Cola full sugar versus Coke Zero tastes fairly similar. And the payoff in reduction in energy costs can be quite big, especially if it's a habit that someone undertakes quite a lot. So if they drink a lot of regular full sugar Coke quite frequently, making that simple swap can save a huge amount of calories. The research tends to suggest that it's either helps with weight management or is neutral. There is some slight research around epidemiological studies, really, that people who are overweight tend to consume more sugar-free drinks, but whether that's actually causing them to be overweight or obese isn't really clear. And there is the theory that people who are overweight or obese are trying to be more mindful of their energy intake and therefore having sugar-free options, which again is that sort of reverse causality that might be misleading in the research. So from my understanding and from what I've worked with people, it tends to be a positive impact or neutral to people. One thing that's really important to reinstate again is that all of these things, all these sweeteners, have been thoroughly tested by the government, and the dosaging that we will have in the drinks that we drink will be such a small fraction of the recommended upper limit or limit that we'd have for a day, and that upper limit or that limit is 1% of what we'd recommend, what we'd see to get into that toxic stage. So it's so small as a fraction. So what we see as the acceptable daily intake levels, or the ADI, we at 0.0001% potentially by having one drink with a sweetener in per day. People often talk about risks with cancer, but again, most of the evidence suggests that artificial sweeteners are safe, typical consumption levels for people, and won't have any impact on people's cancer risk. Some will suggest that, again, might affect weight gain and blood sugar levels, but control trials generally show that artificial sweeteners can help with reduced calorie intake and aid in weight loss. One thing to be aware of, though, that if you are pre-diabetic or diabetic, some sweeteners may impact your insulin levels or your blood glucose readings, just because they won't be completely calorie free. So that's something to be mindful of as well. There is a suggestion that potentially that artificial sweeteners may stimulate your appetite or disrupt your blood sugar control, but again, evidence on these points is really inconclusive, and some areas of research around artificial sweeteners again suggest that there could be an impact on the gut microbiome, but we don't yet know whether that is a positive or negative impact as well. So one thing that I think is really important to state at this point is that this isn't a blanket yes or no statement on whether you should drink artificially sweetened drinks or sugar-free drinks. I think it all depends on your circumstances, your goals, the context that needs to be provided here. So would I recommend clients to drink it? Personally, I don't have a problem with them drinking it, but if they don't want to drink it, I wouldn't force them to, because I don't think there's any health benefits over sweetened or sugar-free drinks versus water. But if they are going from a sugar-sweetened beverage, we know that potentially that is linked, having sugar drinks that are full sugar is linked with poorer health outcomes. And one of the biggest impacts that sugar can actually have on our health is dental work as well. So it would be a good step forward, in my opinion, to improve people's health outcomes, or at least not have a negative impact for somebody going from full sugar to sugar-free. But would it be something that I'd recommend to have lots of? Again, probably not. If they're relying on it too much, then I may sort of look at potentially what they're trying to achieve through that. But in regards to safety, I don't think there's anything to worry about with regards to sugar-free drinks. The research doesn't suggest that there is. Again, frequency is important. So if people are wanting to drink, I'd always suggest trying water or squash potentially. So managing the amount of sweetener that could be added to that drink, and using the sweet sugar-free drinks on occasions where they feel that they might prefer them or need them. Again, being careful of the sweetener of choice. As I've said, some sweeteners may disagree with people's digestive tract. They make them give them an upset stomach. And I also did a really interesting practical during my masters where we used sweeteners to make sugar-free custard, and tried all using different types of sweetener. And I can't remember which one we used, but we all had very similar recipes designed for that sweetener, but the results were very different on the consistency, texture and taste of the custard. So again, having a look at like for like swaps, or what's going to be the best sweetener for what job if you're using it in cooking, could be something worth looking into. And as with all these things, the overall diet is so important. The sugar-free drinks shouldn't be featuring hugely in your diet. It shouldn't be something that you are overly focused on, above things like getting adequate protein in fruits and vegetables, ensuring that you're getting enough whole foods in, having a positive relationship with food. A little bit of a sugar-free drink won't make a huge difference. If it's something that we're overly relying on, then maybe we may have to look at that. Or if we are currently on full sugar drinks, swapping to a sugar-free alternative is a great step, in my opinion, where either we can improve someone's health or have a positive impact on someone's health, or it won't have a negative, which I think is just as important as well. Obviously, there's lots of myths around sweeteners. People will talk about them with absolute certainty without really understanding the research. A lot of the claims that are made on rodent studies where they might see increased risk of certain conditions, but that doesn't or hasn't been shown to correlate in humans. And a lot of the mechanistic stuff hasn't played out in realism or realistic terms either. So in my opinion, sugar-free drinks are good to go. Don't over rely on them, but can be a great swap if you're currently on a full sugar version. So there you have it. Thank you very much for listening to today's episode of the Balanced Approach podcast. If you have any questions, queries, or would like to reach out to me, please do. I am at Louis Padian Nutrition, which is at LOUISPADIAN Nutrition on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all other social media platforms. If you're looking for support in achieving your goals and living a healthier, happier, and more balanced life in the process, click the link below and inquire about working with me. Remember to subscribe to the Balanced Approach podcast wherever you're listening for more insightful episodes, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.